meanwhile, when we start, last few questions. So, how many of you work in agile-based firms? Okay. Uh, so, do you think you follow agile practices very diligently, or is it like just for the sake of it? For the sake of it. Okay. And how many of you have heard of extreme programming? Only one person? Or is there anyone at the back? Okay, no one. Okay, the next question is maybe like there are many traditional ways of working, right? Maybe code reviews you've heard of. So, how many of you go through the process of code reviews in your day to day development? I think most of the crowd. And what about testing? How do you go about testing in your teams? Is it like towards the end of the cycle? How is it? Maybe a couple of people can share their experience. Maybe you want to share?
You ask the testing.
Yeah, how do you go about testing in your team?
Uh, generally, we do generally we do the unit testing only. I'm talking about the front end development. So sprint wise, once we done with the development for particular story, we will go for the unit test.
After development, you write the test.
Yes, we don't follow the TDD.
Okay. Okay, there is one person at the back. Okay. Mhm. Understood. Okay, what's the name? And what's the name? All right. Is there anyone else who would like to share? Okay. 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 All right. So that gives me a bit of an idea how much in deep I should cover certain topics. So let's get started. Uh, all right. So Anuja has already introduced me. So maybe I'll just talk about about my 4 years of experience. So during my stint at ThoughtWorks and even at current in my current team, including that, so I've worked with 5+ software teams of different sizes. There was a team of only 4 devs, maybe only just 2 devs. There was a team of 15 devs. And there were teams where there were a lot of budget constraints and the delivery timelines were very strict. So, based on those different contexts, we have adopted these extreme programming practices differently. So, this talk is also going to be bit opinionated, as in what worked and what didn't work. Maybe you can have some takeaways around the same based on how your team relates to it. So, before we dive into XP, let's see why do we need it in first place. I'll talk about few scenarios. I think all of us may have been there at some or the other point. So here's a small thing, small ask from you. If you can relate to any of the scenarios, you have to raise your hands. Okay, let's make it a bit interactive. Um, so first scenario, a team which is hope driven or the YOLO developers, a team which tests in the runtime, which hopes that they can scan their code through their eyes and see for any failures. How many of you can relate? Okay. Okay. I think there are quite a few people. Even I was there in my first company, which was a startup. All right, the second one, code quality versus deadline. How your code quality leaves the soul of the project as the deadline approaches. Been there? Okay, most of us. Okay, that's a good one. Another scenario, the knowledge silo, where you have that one God developer in your team who has almost all the context of the legacy code base, or maybe you have different people in the team who have context on different areas of project. And if your project faces some prod issues, it's a hell without those developers. How many of you can relate? Okay, again, a lot of people. All right, we'll go to the next one, the firefighting team. Team which is always solving bugs and prod, just like this guy. How many of you can relate? Okay, it's like quite a few. Okay. So now that we know we are able to relate to many of these scenarios, this meme you might have seen. So let's see now how XP can help you tackle these challenges in your team. So XP is a set of values, principles, and practices that you can follow to tackle these challenges in your development teams at every level, be it at a code level, be it in terms of collaboration, be it in terms of planning, or how you go about releasing your product. So it goes around all those areas and tackles those challenges at every level so that you can have your improved code quality and you do not compromise on timelines. So that is what exactly the slide says. I'll skip the content, but there is a book, Extreme Programming Explained. It's a book by Kent Beck. He wrote in 1992, I guess, but it's a good one. It gives you a highlight of all those practices in detail that you can check out to, get started with knowing more in detail about XP. So why do we call it extreme? So I asked few people before starting the talk, how many of you go through code reviews, right? There were a lot of people. So what extreme programming says that code reviews takes time. After development, you take few days to do code reviews. There is a dependency on another person. It says don't do it. Instead, do pair programming. Do that every day. So your code review is done with every line of code that you write. So it takes it to the extreme level. Similarly, there are teams which do testing towards the end, like you shared. Like there was one person at the back who shared, right? So what extreme programming says, you do that every day with, each line of code that you write, like one person shared at the back. And similarly, integration. So how frequently do your teams release your code to production? Maybe I'll take a couple of hand raise. Anyone share? Yeah. Once a week. Okay, that's a good one. Okay, someone at the back, how frequently do you integrate your code to production? Yeah. 50 days. Okay, that's a big. Okay, 15. Okay, that's still a good one. All right. So I think these teams are doing good, but there are teams which integrate, after 6 months. I have worked with one client who did that, and it was a very big release and a lot of dependencies started coming up. So what Extreme says, you do a continuous integration. That is continuous delivery, but here it means you merge your code in, in your master branch more frequently instead of doing a branch-based development. Maybe the last one. So I've seen teams which, do planning at the very beginning, a lot of planning, but that doesn't cater to the changing requirements of the client or the customers, right? So they have to go about planning again and again. So what Extreme says, you have your code sprints, like, maybe a couple of weeks sprint, and you involve your client or stakeholders in those meetings, and you iteratively go about planning and revisiting your, deadlines and your commitments. So now that we know why do we call it extreme, so these are the set of the 12 XP practices that we have. At the innermost level, you see TDD, pairing, simple design, refactoring, which at its core we as devs do in our day-to-day work. And maybe the outer circle, the whole team, the planning game, it's around the collaboration with entire team as a whole. How do you go about planning your sprint? So in the interest of time, I'll not dive into all of them, maybe a couple of them, which I use in my day-to-day work and how it helped me in context of different projects. So pair programming. Anyone knows what is pair programming? Okay, yeah. You need a mic? Okay. Right. Correct. Yeah, thank you for answering that. So that is what exactly pairing is. One person is called driver, one is called navigator. So driver is, and you basically share same resources as depicted in this picture. You share same keyboard, mouse, screen. One person who writes the code and follows all the syntaxes is the driver. One person who is reviewing each line of code as it is written is called navigator, and they both help in brainstorming and improving the quality of code. You can take analogy of like driving. One person is driving and other person is helping with navigating through Google Maps or something. Only difference is both people know how to drive. There is no place for passenger princess in pair programming. So as I said, that is technically what a driver navigator mode of pairing works. And you switch roles very frequently, because one person writing code entire day, other person just staring at screen, it would be very boring. And I also start feeling sleepy if I'm doing that. So you make sure you switch your roles frequently. And if one person is absent, you can inform your other devs so that they can continue with the changes. So now that we know this, like people who may not have heard of pairing before, what is your opinion when you heard this is what pair programming is? Anyone? Just one person. Okay. Maybe. All right. Maybe I'll share my experience. Like when I joined my first company. So from second day onwards, I was asked to do pairing. My initial reaction was, okay, I'll be judged for my coding speed. Or maybe I was a Python dev. I had very little idea about Java or React. So I thought maybe they'll consider me a misfit for the job or something. So a lot of fears came up. But as I worked on the projects, I started liking pairing and I started vouching for it in different teams. So let's see how you can go about doing pair programming. Let's take very simple example. Please ignore the UI. It's just for the sort of demo. So maybe you have a user story where you need to allow user to add a to-do item. And when it happens, you have to make this box appear where they can check box this to-do item. And there is a delete option. And then the date is also showing when the user added that. Okay, so how do you do that in pairing is you divide this task first. You brainstorm what is the smallest piece of code you can deliver, right? Maybe let's say first this input box and add button should appear. That is the smallest chunk. And then you add some API call to, hit the backend, save this task in, backend or maybe in the state of the UI. And then third task, and that is how you go about it. So you brainstorm, you break down the task. So it makes you, do not get into writing code initially. You give time to brainstorm. Then you set the time, smallest goal to achieve and when to switch roles. So ideally, when I pair, I take 20 minutes as the dev cycle, maybe max 30 minutes, because that also helps me track that I'm not spending too much time. If I'm stuck, I can reach out or, seek help from someone else. And then we keep each other accountable for that. There are other things which I will talk about later, but on a high level, this is what it is, and you keep each other accountable. There are some coding standards you all must have defined in your teams, right? So you make sure those are getting followed, and you keep each other unblocked. Let's say one person is driving, maybe the navigator can do a research on their end if something is not working, and vice versa. So, and you help each other optimize the code. You see, you get focused basically. And I'm someone who gets distracted easily, very honest. So pairing also helps me stay focused and, get things done in 1 hour, which I would take maybe, couple of hours. So benefits of pairing. And maybe now that I've talked about pairing, maybe anyone who can relate and share, you think there is any benefit of pairing you see? In terms of? Right, right. Thanks for answering that. I will take one more. Yeah, exactly. The chances of bugs are reduced. I'll take one more maybe. Anyone? All right. Okay. We'll move forward. So yeah, as you said, maybe your, code reviews are happening on the go, and, your code is more optimized. There is more, more approaches in your hand. And then there is a knowledge sharing as well happening. Maybe let's say if you're new to the team, you can pair with your tech lead. You can pair with a senior engineer who has a lot of context within team. So it can help you get onboarded quickly. Like I switched recently, so in couple of months I was able to get onboarded through pairing, which would usually take a lot of time because it's a legacy system since 147 years. A lot of applications are there, so this helped a lot in fastening the process. Another one may be, collective code ownership. If you have a bug, there are two people to blame. And along with that, if someone is on holiday, then the dependency is reduced. There is more person, who has that context around that piece of code. So these are some of the, benefits. Now let's see how it compares to pull request reviews or code reviews. Maybe someone would like to answer. If yeah. Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Hmm. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for answering. So yeah, pull request, as you said, it's at the end of the dev cycle you do. So it takes up, maybe another 4 5 days. That person might be busy as well. Right. So you are getting it reviewed. And if you have, different level of experience person in your team, maybe I have personally experienced, like I have implemented code with one approach, but that is not the optimal one. I was asked to change the entire approach when it was in a PR state. But if I code review before, I would have been able to implement that more early in the dev cycle, not adding any delays. So that is how pairing can help you. Uh, Now, how did we make it all work? I'll talk about some, context of the project based on different team sizes, and then how did we make it work? Maybe there was a team of 4+ devs. Like I mentioned, I was in a team of 15 developers. So we used to maintain something known as pairing metrics. So let's say there is a team of 7 devs, Naresh, Suresh, Dinesh, Ramesh. And on a side note, we did have a team with these rhyming names. At least first four were the rhyming names. There were 5 rhyming names. So what we would do on each day, the sprint, the stand up. So we would, so the yellow color would highlight the active pair. We would see who is working with whom person. Let's say Dinesh is working with China, Naresh is working with Meena, and so on. And we maintain the count. Let's say this is the start of the sprint, first day. You keep the score. And let's say from previous sprint, let's say Naresh and Dinesh have paired 7 days. So we keep a timeline, like more than 7 days, no two pairs are working together. So this ensures there is no pair affinity. And if you have different people coming up, to pair with, so it will bring different ideas. So that, and then you will also have shared context. Maybe there is a long feature. So instead of just 2 people having context, if you do pair rotation, there is a concept of pair rotation. So more people will have context around it. So that is what we promote. And let's say someone is working solo. Let's say Ramesh's pair was absent. So he is working solo. So that is how we go about tracking this down, and we maintain a new sheet in every sprint. Now, let's talk about scenario when teams do not have budget. We actually had a couple of clients, one where we didn't used to pair at all. Second, we used to pair, but we had to switch to something else because of the budget cut. So there is a concept of dogmatic versus pragmatic pairing. So dogmatic means you pair all the time. Honestly, that is not feasible. Even I don't pair all the time. So pragmatic is something you do ad hoc, as it says. You do it when it is needed. So let's say you have a very crucial feature and it takes up, a lot of brainstorming and all to come up with the optimal approach. So it's a better idea to pair, and you call out in your meetings, I need a pair for this. Or maybe you're new to team, you need context. You call out, I need a pair for this. Or maybe, let's say, even that is not allowed. We had a client where pairing was not allowed at all. So what we would do again, ad hoc pairing. I will reach out to maybe tech lead or someone who is more experienced with that tech. And I would say, can we pair for an hour? I want to get unblocked on this. Or maybe if, let's say, I've written my code, but I'm not sure if that is the best way to write about it. Maybe I will reach out to someone and I'll say, see, this was the feature. This is how I've written. I'll give them a walkthrough and they'll give me a feedback if this is the right way or not. So that way you can go about it. So on that note, I will end this particular section with a thought that don't do pairing with a mindset to please your leader. If, if let's say pairing is a need in your team, but you don't like it, so don't do it with that context. Rather do it with a value that you want to communicate. You want to share your ideas. You want to get feedback quickly. You want to optimize your code. You want to catch the errors. You want to fasten the process of development. Now there are AI tools you can use to get, unblock quickly. Use Copilot, like there are other tools. But still pair with this mindset and you will find much more benefits. So on a side note, don't be this guy as a pair programmer. Okay. Yeah. So I will move to the next section. Test driven development. Okay. How many of you know TDD or follow TDD? Okay, just 4 or 5 people. And how many of you know TDD? Okay, that's half of the audience. All right. So, unit testing you do, right? Can someone tell me what is unit testing? Just one person. Okay, yeah. So, like you mentioned, it's like you are testing separate component of your code, the smallest component of your code in an independent manner. Let's say, button should be visible on screen, that example I shared. So you are testing if it's visible to the user or not. But that is not equal to TDD. So what TDD says is, you first write a test to, failing test. You write a code to make it pass, and then you refactor your changes. So again, like I mentioned in pairing, you brainstorm, you divide the task. So TDD forces you to do that. You divide it into smallest deliverable, like let's say that button should be visible, and that you can easily make in 20 minutes, right? Not a difficult task. And then you write a failing test, like you say, user should be able to see the add button. And then you write a minimal logic to make that test pass. And then you refactor. Does anyone know here what is refactoring? Okay, I think, yeah. Exactly. So anyone can write code to make it machine readable. Those who can write code to make it human readable are the real OGs. Okay. So you refactor, you don't break functionality, but you make sure that is maintainable in the long run. And then you repeat the cycle with the other changes. So this is how we call it RGB cycle. You might hear it in different teams. So it's like you write a list of test cases, as in the things you need to implement. You pick one test, you write a failing test, you make it pass, and the blue means you are refactoring. So RGB cycle you follow continuously as you pair. So let's see how it would look like with pairing versus without pairing. Let's say you had to implement, again, this to-do example. This time you have to implement delete functionality, that you have to make it appear as the with the to-do item. When user clicks on it, there is a confirmation that it asks whether you want to delete it. And if you click on cancel, it should not delete. If you click on confirm, it should be able to delete it, right? So now, initially when I used to work, as a fresher, I would implement everything at once, that okay, theek hai. And then it would make my debugging very difficult, like I have written like 2-3 files of code, or maybe, long file, and it's difficult to find where exactly it is breaking. Now let's see how it would look like with TDD. So what is the first thing you can implement for this delete functionality? The smallest thing. Anyone? The button. Okay, and the second step after this? Okay, okay, but we can further break it down. Okay. What else? Ha, good. Good one. Correct. Or maybe you had an API call, right? So that is what exactly you do. It's written, like, let's say, this is React testing library I've used. Like you say, user should be able to display delete button. So you say, like, you enter a to-do item, you add, and then you click on add button, then screen get delete button should be there in the document, right? And then this is a minimal logic to get it passing. There's a button, delete button, on delete, there is a console log, like you mentioned. Okay. And then it's the same thing. You should show a confirmation pop-up. I've written that, maybe I could have written an API call to the backend, and then, again, a confirmation that, are you sure you want to delete this? It should appear, right? Of course, it will fail. So again, this is the to-do behavior I've added on click, that based on that, it will do it in the state, then backend call will go later. And that is how you can go about it. So how I found TDD helpful. Maybe would anyone like to share how it can help? Just one person, in the interest of time. Okay. All right, maybe I'll go about it. So as I mentioned, like I would go about writing all the code at once. So it would, slow down my debugging. Versus if I know I'm implementing one thing at a time. So if first thing was passing, second implementation, anything fails, I know it failed because this time I added something buggy. So it would be easier to trace back. So I found it helpful in that way. And then as I did that, there was a safety net getting laid easily. Like if anything would break, I have a fast feedback I'm getting, and I can refactor with more confidence that I'm not breaking anything. And there is a simpler modular code, because as you go about it, you can see which design pattern you can follow. Is there any repeating code that you can refactor? So you follow those things. And okay, one question. How many of you are fan of writing, I will share the comments in the code. Okay. Okay, I think there are 3-4 people. I think I have strong opinion about writing the comments in code. Like unless you are generating, the documentation through automation tools, I find it, very less readable. So rather, like I showed one example of test case, right? The description can help you see what exactly that file of code is doing. Sorry? Exactly. So it's like that. The test description is human readable. You can see what all things it can do, right? And then there is a visibility on progress. Have you worked with a manager who is very, anxious, who wants to know progress every, how many? Okay, quite a few people. Or maybe there is a critical prod issue. You need to update on progress. That is the need. So doing TDD or having small commits would help make your progress visible on GitHub, that okay, this is what this is coming out to be. So now let's see the scenarios where it didn't help. Of course, if we say we follow TDD, even I don't do it all the time. So let's say there is a legacy code base. I already know what the functionality is and I need to add on top of it. So I cannot go about writing test case first. I'll need to understand the code. Maybe I can use some automation tool. Like there are some booths out there who are, promoting their tools which can write tests for you, analyzing the code. So that you do. So in those cases, it will not be feasible. And maybe let's say you're working on a code which is rapidly changing. There is some proof of concept you're building. So in that case, it would be difficult. It would not make any sense to follow TDD, right? So on a end note for this slide, this section, think of TDD as a design approach. Don't think as if you're writing tests. See it as a way you're designing your code. You're going to deliver your feature and, make your code more readable. So that way it will give you, reap you better benefits. I will not go into the deep of this, but since I was telling about refactoring, you refactor, so I'll just end it on a couple of more slides. So this is how we go about it, right? As deadline approaches, the quality. Yeah. So, and then there is a thing called technical debt. How many of you are aware? Can someone explain? Maybe that person at the back. Yeah. Yeah. Good, very good. I like the explanation. Give a clap for this one. Yeah. So technical debt is exactly that. Can't as in technical can't you do? ठीक है कि 3 files में you have same code repeating, and then as you go with time, your cost to maintain your project increases. There is a lot of maintainable, code you have to maintain, which is repeatable, or there are other code smells. So that is what you need to track when you are, making sure that your project is maintainable. So another thing is code smell. Anyone who is aware what is a code smell? Anyone? Sorry? No. No. Not buggy. It works. Exactly. So on a layman term, like you explained, when a developer looks at your code and this is what their reaction is. Okay, that is technically what is a code smell. I will not say it out loud, but yeah. So on this note, I will, in this section, you can go about exploring what are code smells, what is technical debt. There is a website, Refactoring Guru. I've not written it in slide, but maybe you can take a note of it. I know there are a lot of AI tools, like devices there, which is helping you write a refactored code. But for that, I believe you should understand the basics first to see what your, AI tool is doing. So it's worth visiting the Refactoring Guru website to understand various code smells, design patterns, and maybe there is this blog. I've written just one link here, martinfowler.com. So he has written a lot of blogs around extreme programming. There are other practices, maybe, retrospectives, 360-degree feedback, a lot of them. So that you can explore. He's a really good person. So on an ending note, I would say motive of extreme programming is not, to achieve an ideal state of the project in one go. Of course, there will be prod issues. That is unavoidable. You can only minimize the instances, right? So if you want to start adopting these practices to make your teams more efficient, maybe pick the one which is the need of your hour. Maybe let's say there is a knowledge silo created. There is too much dependency on one person. So you can start with pairing, to have that knowledge shared with all the devs in team. Maybe let's say the code is not well tested. There are a lot of instances of prod issues. So you can start with, writing unit tests first to lay that initial safety net, then your integration, other tests. So see what is need of in your team and accordingly implement that practice. And then you see the compounding effect. So that's it from my end. These are my socials. You can connect with me. So I'll take like 1 or 2 questions and we can close this. Maybe one question? Yeah.
Product is more important rather than the technical enhancement. I'm not saying the technical enhancement is important, but rather than the product for end user के क्या मिलता है वो है.
Correct.
जैसे हम developers develop करते हैं तो जैसे आपने बोला कि technical चीजें use बनाओ तो So when you are planning or developing stuff and your product and business is impacted by whatever you're developing, how do you balance कि मैं यहाँ पे technical debt कराऊँ या ये को डालूँ और
Okay, I got your question. That's a really good question, actually. And honestly, that would be a race for, I think, for a longer time, since from now onwards as well, the race between product and tech. So I think from a startup standpoint, like when you have to earn the initial bread. So product race is, wins the race, then the tech. Let's be honest about it, right? So in that case, maybe you as a dev can follow that, because now there are AI tools which are coming in place. So if you are aware of the basics, you just need to leverage it to make sure your safety nets are also laid down. But you also can do one thing. There is a concept like you can track your technical debts that you can address in next sprint, making sure those are getting addressed. Maybe that is second way to go about it. And third thing is, maybe that is not even in the picture. There is still, a lot of deadlines to deal with. You have to make your product sell. So at some point, you need to pivot. Even in my current company, we are doing a modernization effort. It's been here since 147 years. Now we are rewriting everything, right? To migrate to cloud. So at some point, you need to pivot and you need to write the things in a way those are maintainable. So you should know when you're pivoting, when you've started gaining traction, your customers are increasing, their requirements are increasing, and then you go about modernizing your project. So these are some ways. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.